Hey, this is Peyton, and I'm ready to rant. And today, the first thing I'd like to ask you is to forgive me if I sound a little off, because I have been sick for the better part of a week, and I am just getting over it. But I wanted to hop on the mic because there's been some recent game news that very much so interests me, because it involves a genre I've talked about a lot in the past on this channel. And I'm going to go ahead and say the name of the rant. I'm calling it The Current State of Platform Fighters, which is a bit of a wordy title, but I wasn't really sure how else to put it because, well, essentially what I'm talking about today is the current state of some very specific platform fighter games. One of them is responsible for the most viewed videos on my channel, and the other one is one I talked about almost as much as that one, and those games are Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl and Warner Brothers MultiVersus. What really spurred me to make this video was the recent announcement of MultiVersus getting shut down. I've been away from active social media use for a little bit, so I didn't catch this news when it dropped. I just saw today, looking around on X, that apparently MultiVersus is in its final season. It just entered it before I started making this video, and they confirmed that very soon all of the online functionality of the game is going to be stopping. They're not going to be making new content for it. It is like the official send-off of the game. Which, by the way, before I forget, I would like to mention that if you have a MultiVersus account and you've spent money on cosmetics or would otherwise just like to keep your account, you can log into the game right now and it'll download the latest version onto your machine so that when MultiVersus eventually shuts down, I think on May 30th, that you will still have access to your stuff and an offline single player or local multiplayer version of the game. So I have an account that actually got started in beta. I was a part of some of the very early beta tests for the game, as were many others, and if you are one of those people and you haven't played it in a while like I have, I highly recommend you go to the link in the description, or I don't even know if I'll link to it, but just go boot up your game so that you get that latest patch and you don't lose any of your stuff. But back on track, I wanted to talk about MultiVersus first, not just because its shutdown is more imminent than Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls, but because I'm gonna lay my cards on the table here. Even back when MultiVersus was announced, I really had tempered expectations for it, because ultimately, MultiVersus is an online-based game, which means one day this was always going to happen. It was always going to die like this one day, because online games just fundamentally stop existing at a certain point. And the thing with a platform fighter, especially one that features all these different characters crossing over, is that you kind of want these products to live on. You don't want to feel like it's constantly on life support, or at least I don't, because the idea of an always online platform fighter just fundamentally does not appeal to me, because a lot of the fun of these games is playing with friends and family, playing locally together. And MultiVersus from the very beginning, it has local multiplayer in it, but it was always an online proposition, a free-to-play game where you need to spend money just to unlock the entire roster. I mean, you can grind out characters, but in beta, I could play as anybody I wanted, and that was just how the game worked back then. It's probably been long enough that this won't matter. I'll actually, if I can find them, put some screenshots on screen of my beta pictures that I actually took with my phone when I was accepted into the second play test of the game. And man, MultiVersus was so much fun back then, and that's kind of the other part of this, is that apparently the gameplay changed a lot. I booted up MultiVersus for the first time in months to secure all of my stuff, to make sure that I keep it all. I did that before recording this. And It was interesting playing through the tutorial because the main thing I remember about early MultiVersus is how absolutely absurd the air movement was. Like, every character was like Kirby in the air. It was absolutely ridiculous, but it made MultiVersus feel very distinct from Smash. And now they just slowed things down quite a fair bit. Like, the characters are still fun to control and everything, but it's not the same game it was in beta, which other people caught on to. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a couple different factors at play, but even when MultiVersus was new, there was a little part of me that just fundamentally did not want it to succeed, because it was a free-to-play, you gotta pay to play sort of game. And I've never clicked with those sorts of games, and applying that to a platform fighter does not change my opinions on that. Like, there's just no reason a game should need constant income from you in order to be fun. Maybe the only platform fighter that is online that I think actually manages to work is Brawlhalla. And, you know, Brawlhalla is actually enjoyable. It's not my favorite platform fighter, but it is an enjoyable game, and it managed to make a free-to-play online platform fighter work. But if you've played Brawlhalla, you know it's nothing like Super Smash Bros. And that's really one of the big reasons that I think MultiVersus was, in hindsight, doomed from the start, because even Smash itself would probably manage to survive if it decided to take that format. It would be a very un-Nintendo move. But for anyone else to attempt to make Smash Bros. But free to play, and you have to pay for the roster, like individually, meal piece, I just don't see how any game could make that work. Like, they needed to do something very different, or they just needed to make it a title that you purchase, and once you've purchased it, you can play it. It shouldn't have had all these microtransactions built into it, and sadly, that's not what happened with MultiVersus. It came out the way it did. I didn't even know it was originally an online game. I talked about this in my one Ready to Rant, that I had to actually buy a LAN cable so that my connection was stable enough to enjoy the game. And soon enough, the game won't even have those features anymore in a couple months. So it's really sad to see MultiVersus go down this road, but it's good to know at least that the offline portions of it are still going to be available. Just remember, once again, to go sign into your account. Don't lose this stuff if you care about it. But let's shift gears now, because I always understood on some level that this was probably going to happen to MultiVersus, unless it just took off in a massive way, like Marvel Rivals did, which it definitely did not. But I want to talk about Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, because I still really enjoy the original Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. And to this day, I am still kind of burnt about what happened with that game. I never really looked into it, because when the news of a Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 reached me, it just really felt odd. Like, it wasn't time yet for a sequel. We had just gotten through the DLC of the first game, and we're already working on a second title that launched with the same number of characters as you had in the first game after DLC, but they swapped out like 11 characters. And granted, All-Star Brawl 2 looked to be an improvement in many ways over the first game. Graphically, like the way movesets were handled, there's a lot of things I just could tell looking at All-Star Brawl 2 that were handled better. It just looked like a more polished title. And if you watched my two most popular long-form videos, my character wish list for the original game, parts 1 and 2, you would know that actually most of the characters I really wanted got added. My top 4 picks, all in a row, were added to All-Star Brawl. Granted, Zuko got added as DLC, but I never even bothered to pick up the game right away. The footage you're seeing right now is footage of the game because I bought it for this video. I finally bought All-Star Brawl 2 just to record this rant, and I wanted to have some gameplay footage on screen. And it's really bittersweet finally, like, playing it a bit, because it's a really good feeling fighting game. And I do like how they handled the game in general. It feels nice to be behind the controller with. But the reality is just that this game came out like right on top of, or at least it felt like it came right on top of, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 1, which I had made so many videos on and put so much time into that I was like, why are we already moving past this? We just added voice acting in one of the last patches, and I think that was one of the last topics I covered in a video on that game. And then we moved straight on to a sequel. It was just very strange, and it gave me like whiplash, and I was like, okay, if they're already working on a sequel, how do I know they're not going to drop a third game if I start putting my effort into this one? And I think a lot of other people felt that way because Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, like if you search on YouTube, it was big back when I think Mr. Krabs released like as the first DLC character for that game. Like, that was about when it reached its peak in popularity, at least online. And then that was kind of it for the sequel. Like, it had that moment, it got really big. I think Zuko and Iroh coming in also helped it blow up. Which, by the way, Iroh, incredibly based pick for Avatar. And that was it. And I don't say all that, like, expecting, even back then, for the game to have been absolutely massive. Like, I even said in my Smash Killer rant a while back, neither of these games are going to kill Smash. Neither of these games were ever even going to hurt Smash. But they were maybe going to be able to exist in their own niche because we had gotten, like, no other platform fighters in the AA or AAA space besides Smash before, at least with the exception of PlayStation All-Stars. And my whole thing was, I thought if they could at least reach their own audience, that they would do well. And the thing is, for various reasons, both these games failed. And with Nick All-Star Brawl, because I don't think I actually said this, the thing is that because we had gotten basically no other games in the platform fighter style before those two, or at least big notable ones, again, besides PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, the thing is that when Nick All-Star Brawl 1 just kind of came and it was hyped up and talked about for a while, and then all of a sudden we were getting the sequel, it really just kind of felt like, why are we moving past this? This first game was the one to get right. And I guess arguably you could say because the first game was botched in many ways with no items, little content outside of just online multiplayer, and no voice acting, that the first game was kind of a sunken ship fallacy at that point. But I don't know, I really still think that the first game is my preference between the two. And there's a lot to like about All-Star Brawl 2, but All-Star Brawl 1 was just like at the right moment, and I guess it just wasn't up to the task. And MultiVersus was, I mean, there were two realities for this game. It's either the one it's facing right now with its shutdown imminent in May, or it was going to become a huge smash hit, which it was kind of both because there were so many players of that game at launch, but I guess it just didn't have the staying power needed for an online game, which, you know, that's a whole other topic, but we won't get into that right now. Anyways, all of this is to say that back when both of these games were announced, I was so excited and so ready to see both, or even just either one of them do well and manage to carve out their own platform fighting niche. Ready to see a game come along and manage to coexist in the same gaming environment as Smash, because gaming is such a huge space. We have tons of room for more platform fighters from bigger developers than just indies. And there's nothing wrong with indie games. I love indie games. I just interviewed a developer of an indie game. But there is something to be said for bigger titles and genres existing, and sadly, MultiVersus and Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, despite how much faith I had in them, they both failed. And technically all three of them did now, because Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, as far as I can tell, is finished. It's not getting patches anymore, it's not getting any more DLC, the game's just quietly been wrapped up. And the thing is that I understand both of these games are technically still going to be around, more so Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 1 and 2 than MultiVersus, unfortunately, but they're all still going to exist to some capacity. The thing that just bums me out is that both these games were so set for success, and they both fumbled the ball in very different ways. And it's just kind of sad because we're coming up on the Switch 2 now at this point. So, because Smash is literally a money printer, and because they still need to add Geno to the game, they're going to make another Smash. They're going to make another one, and it's going to be, the next biggest platform fighter, because every Smash basically tops the previous one, at least effectively since Brawl. Like, every Smash that comes along is better than the one before it. And, whether this Smash is a soft reboot, whether it's Smash Ultimate Plus and they bring the entire roster over from Ultimate, plus like 2 Pokemon in the base game, no matter what happens with it, we'll see another Smash. And that's nice, but I just really wanted to see this genre finally spread its wings, and it looks like we're right back at the beginning of the period of time after PlayStation All-Stars came out and failed. I feel like at this point, most publishers and developers aren't going to want to touch this genre because they're going to think, oh, we're going to be another failed Smash Bros. Clone, which is really disappointing. But I don't want to end this on a downer note, so I'm going to remind you of some great platform fighters you should check out. Super Smash Flash 2, classic game. If you haven't played Super Smash Flash 2, what are you doing here? Go download it. I'll link to it in the description. This is like the best free platform fighter ever. Nothing else comes close. Play that. Rivals of Aether II. Great sequel to the original Rivals of Aether. They just added Etalus from the first game. I don't know if he's DLC or if he's actually in the base roster, but regardless, they're bringing more characters into that game, and that game is a huge step up budget-wise from the first game. Like, just look at it. I mean, I love pixel art, but I have to admit, they're doing a great job translating all those characters to 3D, and doing a 3D indie platform fighter. It's amazing looking. Go try that if you're interested. And Fraymakers is still steadily making progress. Sadly, the game is not anywhere near where I'd like it to be, but the game is getting further along in development, and I think it's far enough along at this point that I can recommend again that you check it out. Sadly, we still haven't gotten a new character, but there's tons of assists in-game referencing, dozens and dozens of games, and even the Newgrounds tank guy is in there. Like, that is a platform fighter absolutely worth checking out if you're into indie games. But as for Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls 1 and 2 and MultiVersus, I think I'm basically done talking about them. And, I'm always going to be looking forward to seeing what the next big platform fighter could be. I'm always going to keep my eyes on this genre because regardless of what I think happened to these games, I still love them. They're all fun. Even, at their worst, I can always boot up a platform fighter and have a great time with friends. And before I wrap up, I'd like to share a clip of Thaddeus Cruz I recorded a few years back. He was one of the lead developers on the original Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, and even though the state of the genre is kind of up in the air right now, at least in the AAA space after what happened to both All-Star Brawls and MultiVersus, I still find that I couldn't agree more with what he said here if I tried.
More, please. Much more, please. Get platform fighters as on the market as traditional fighters are right now. That would mean everything to me.
But I think I've gone on long enough, so let me know, what do you think of Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 1 and 2 and MultiVersus? Do you feel sad like I do that they're getting closed? Do you have a favorite game amongst the three? Are you a Nick All-Star Brawl 1 or 2 guy? And did you have any characters you wanted to see added to MultiVersus who sadly couldn't get in before the final season hit? Let me know in the comments. This has been Peyton, and I'm done ranting.